Last night, a friend hurried me out of my house to make it in time for the opening act at a music night at a local bar. After having a few drinks, I noticed that my phone was missing from my pocket. I looked around the table where we were seated at the bar and checked the bathrooms, but I had no success in finding it. Using my friend's phone, I called my own number. After 2 rings, someone answered with a low, raspy giggle and then hung up. They didn't answer when I tried calling again, so I eventually gave up, thinking it was a lost cause, and decided to head home. When I got home, I found my phone lying on my nightstand exactly where I had left it. Bus driver. When I was young, I was always the last child to be picked up by the bus driver for school. One day, while I was waiting alone for the bus, a bus without any children pulled up. The driver smiled and told me to get on. I had an uneasy feeling about it and asked where the other kids were. He replied that we would go get them now and insisted that I board the bus. He became increasingly insistent but didn't do anything extreme. I kept refusing, and eventually he just shrugged and left. The actual bus arrived a few minutes later. I went to school, and my parents were unaware of the incident until I mentioned it that night. Looking back, they were quite concerned, and I remember them making several phone calls in a hurry. The lady next door a few years ago. I rented an apartment from a friend who had recently purchased and fully renovated it. He tried selling it but couldn't find a buyer, so I proposed renting it temporarily. After moving in, I noticed something was off about the lady next door. She appeared to be around 45 but looked much older. She would stay up all night listening to Christian radio shows and talking loudly to someone. It reached a point where I couldn't sleep, so I went over to her place and asked her to lower the volume. When she opened the door, I caught a quick glimpse inside. Her walls were covered with crosses painted in various colors, and words like Jesus and angels were scribbled everywhere. The windows were painted black, blocking out all light. The place was damp, with yellow-stained, 50-year-old carpets, dog excrement, and cockroaches everywhere, but there was no dog. I asked her to please keep it down, but she just looked at me and shut the door, turning up the radio even louder. The next night, my girlfriend was staying over. I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a shadow of a person next to the bed, looking at us sleeping. I thought I was hallucinating, as I often do in the dark when I'm sleepy, but then the shadow started talking. It was my neighbor, and she was holding something in her hand. She had broken in during the night, and who knows how long she stood there. "You should lock your doors at night," she said, and walked out. The next morning, I heard someone making strange noises below my bedroom window. It was my neighbor talking to herself in tongues. She had a plastic bag in her hand with her rotting dead dog inside. It was extremely hot outside, and I could smell death from that bag. At this point, I was terrified. She was obviously very insane. I went upstairs and knocked on another person's door to ask what was going on. The guy was as scared as I was. Apparently, she had broken into his apartment one evening as well while he was watching TV with his kids. He got up from the couch to get a snack, only to find her behind the couch, staring at him and holding a power drill. Come to think of it now, I know what was in her hand. At this stage, I was basically terrified. I called the cops, and they knew all about her. Apparently, she was a violent schizophrenic who hadn't taken her meds, but they couldn't force her or enter her apartment without her permission because she owned it. The only thing they could do was get her when she went outside. I stayed up for the next 2 days, waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. When I heard her leave at 2 a.m. to go across the road to the 7-Eleven, I called the cops. They had 3 cars and a special van there in less than 2 minutes. They restrained her, threw her in the van, and drove off to some institution. In less than a minute, it was like she was never there. I never saw her again but still have nightmares about her looking at me in my sleep. Was about 15 minutes away from finishing my night shift at work when there was a loud crash on one of the windows in the office. I got up and went to check it out. Someone had thrown a large rock through one of the windows at the front of the building. This was especially strange because I was working in the industrial district at 11:30 at night with none of the other businesses open. I went back to my desk, made a quick call to security to inform them, and decided to head home. As I was leaving the building, I was getting more and more freaked out about it and ended up running to my car, getting in, and driving off. I was almost home and had started to calm down a bit when I realized that I hadn't unlocked my car when I got in. It had been unlocked the whole time. I did a quick check with my hand in the back seat for any possible intruders, but there was nothing there. Fast forward about 30 minutes. I had called a friend of mine who said he was out drinking, so I decided to join him. I jumped on my bicycle and started riding over, leisurely pedaling along the road. It was a nice night, and I was in no big rush, just enjoying the moonlight when I heard someone riding behind me. I straightened up and stuck to one side of the road. He passed me really slowly, and when he was right beside me, he shot me a smile that I can only describe as purely insane. I kind of flinched and watched as he rode on. That's when I realized he was riding my mom's bike. Needless to say, I sprinted home as fast as I could. When I got there, sure enough, her bike was missing, and one of my car's doors, the back left one, was open. I had been driving and had no need to open that door. The payphone I worked the night shift at a campground, from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. Every night. It wasn't too bad. I would bring my PS2 and play games for most of the night, only having to deal with one or two people on busy nights. It was just me in this small 8x8 shack with nothing but darkness surrounding me all night. During my first week there, the other third shift guy, who was quitting, told me about a payphone a few feet from the shack where I worked. He mentioned that it rang every night at 4:17 a.m. just once. He guessed it was probably just an automated test call, but admitted he had never answered it himself. I continued with the job for a few months. Since it was the middle of summer, most nights I kept the windows closed so I couldn't hear the payphone ring. In mid-August, I started leaving the windows open during the night. Sure enough, at 4:17 a.m. every morning, the phone would ring once. The ring even sounded eerie, like the payphone had been submerged in water before being placed where it sat. One night, I gathered the courage to answer it. I set an alarm for 4:15 a.m. and would go wait at the phone until it rang. When it did, I answered, but there was no sound, just dead air, as if someone was on the other line but not responding. I said hello a few times and then hung up. I did this every night for a week with the same results. I didn't think much of it and left it alone after that for about a month. The first week of October, I decided to answer the phone once again. I set my alarm, and when the time came, I answered the phone. I repeatedly said hello into the receiver. Then I heard what sounded like someone inhaling through clenched teeth. The voice that followed was rough and gravelly, as if the person had gargled gravel. He said my name, my full name, first, middle, and last. It was a voice I had never heard before. My voice caught in my throat, and I hung up. I rattled some change into the payphone and dialed star 69. The number that came up was from California. I lived in Indiana.